All right, it is happening. We are streaming live, our first Ask the Editor live with none other than Matt from LMV Productions. Thank you, dude, for joining me on this. Yeah, absolutely. I've been really excited for this idea of, just chatting about editing topics live with a chance for anybody watching to just kind of ping questions to the filmmaker, to me, I guess, if they are interested in what I have to say. just to focus in on editing, talk about piecing stories together, not get too lost in the weeds with like running a business and shooting and like everything else that comes with being a filmmaker. This is strictly a space to discuss editing. So I'm super thrilled that you were down to do it with me. So thanks. Let's see. Reports are in. You're good. You have a voice.
I just keep talking, yeah.
So things you may have missed out if you're watching this live. Matt saying way too many nice things about working with us.
See, that's why I very much wanted the audio not to work when I was saying the nice things about you guys.
I told you it's
So
not a
now
plug. So let's just.
now that we're moved past that
There we go.
where now the audio will work and people will hear, because now we're just going to talk about the wedding films and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah, we got it from here. Cool.
yeah,
Okay, so I don't think I need to repeat the first question because I think everyone heard me.
yeah.
So, but I'll.
But
Yeah.
you were talking about like kind of how we get our story down and that kind of stuff. And over the years, I remember years ago, we'd chat with the couple a little bit before the wedding day, and then what would happen is we'd show up and be ready to go. Now we try to take a lot more time in the pre-production aspect of it, and we want to make sure that we talk with them about what's important to them, because all this is all about their day.
So we just want to make sure that that's all set and that's how that's going to be working.
working.
So come the day of the wedding, we're ready to go. We know what questions we want to ask and how it's going to go. And that makes the editing process a lot better as well. So
Okay, so would you say then that your narrative structure varies from film to film and is adapted to like what is important to that couple in particular?
yeah, every wedding film is different. So we don't have a set template of how it's going to be working and that sort of stuff. With our wedding films and how we work with you is we kind of break it down into sections. So we use multiple songs to kind of section off each part of the day, whether it be the beginning part of the day, the prep story, the ceremony is obviously important leading into the reception. So it's different sections of the day, and almost like its own mini films within a bigger scope of film. And then what we try to do is try to find a common thread, maybe from the beginning, the middle, and the end to kind of weave through. And then that's what kind of brings it all together with our films. So, and the biggest thing with that we do is interviews as well. Is that's kind of something that we do that not everyone does. There are some videographers out there who do an amazing job with that stuff, but something we really try to do and really kind of puts a personal touch on things. So
Yeah, and so do you determine like those interviews and like who you're going to talk to about what based on like the way that you intake the information? And I realize we're kind of getting a little far from like the editing of the story.
yeah, but it's important.
Yeah,
Because we chat with them beforehand, and the interviews couples it's sometimes 50-50. Sometimes they're very nervous about it because they have this. First off, we don't even call them interviews with our couples. We call them casual conversations with them, because sometimes the word interview might be a little bit intimidating. They might think it's like a 60 minutes kind of sit down, kind of like hard-nosed thing, where in reality it's like, oh, you're done your hair and makeup, we have 5 minutes, let's move over to the side and let's chat a little bit about how you guys met, how did the proposal go down, why did you choose this venue, and just those kind of things. And then what we do is we ask those questions to also, the groom, maybe the parents, grandparents, if they're around while getting ready. And then that allows us to all have all these people give their perspectives of the same story. And then that helps with weaving it all together. So.
Yeah, that's great. I think it's important, or at least it's a key identifier of your brand to have like a well-rounded perspective of the day, like offering these different multiple viewpoints as opposed to like a filmmaker whose edits come together like from a more a narrow perspective, right? Not that that's bad, just different.
And we know we know the proposal story beforehand. We know how they met beforehand, because some of these stories are just incredible. And the other thing with us, we don't we kind of cap it off at about 15 weddings a year. I mean, when we first started out, I remember doing like 30 between 30 and 35 weddings, and that volume was, it was hard to give the necessary attention to the couples and to dive into those stories. So our strategy has been to like dial it back a little bit and then really try to get to know our couples beforehand, the ones that we have booked, and then find that story. So again, all that work is done beforehand. So come the day of, their expectations are set, our expectations are set, and then the editing, we kind of already know where it's going to go. So
nice. So you're already starting to kind of like build the edit a bit as in your mind, right? As far as like your expectations of how the story is going to come together, even during the intake process when you're asking them what's important to them.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
You hear that story, and then some of our favorite things is we love to ask about the proposal story. And nowadays, there are some awesome proposals where a lot of times the groom or whoever will film it or get a photographer hiding and stuff. And once they say like that happened, it's like, all right, I need that footage, or I need to get those photos. And then you either get it from the couple, or sometimes I'll try to chat with maybe a family member to get it from someone else. So when we show the film to the couple, it's like a nice little surprise. And it's not just like wedding day stuff, so it's more so a story of them than just these 24, 48 hours of their wedding.
Yeah, that's very cool. So, so circling back a little bit to the topic of finding your story. So once you've captured all the footage from a wedding and you're ready to sit down to edit, I always coach editors that like the name of the game is not become overwhelmed with all of the options, because I picture an edit basically like an endless hallway of doors, right? Like kind of like in the Matrix or something. And it's like you could go down any of them. They're all open, ready to go. But once you start building out your edit, you start to lock some of those doors. You start to close them and kind of put yourself in a structure, which is good. Like you need to start whittling it down and whatnot. So when there's so many options, so many possibilities of how you could go, how do you determine which route you're going to take?
The biggest thing, and you said it too about like getting like overwhelmed and that kind of stuff. I used to be like super overwhelmed, and it's all changed once it's been a little bit more collaborative, where it's not just me. It's not just like myself, like, oh, this is how it is in my head and how it's going to work. It's having a conversation with you guys. You guys have an awesome kind of template, how we make that work. I know we'll be talking about a little bit as well. My wife, Heather, plays the biggest part in kind of all of our edits and kind of getting her perspective and stuff. And after the wedding day, when it's fresh in your mind, you just go and take all these notes right away and remember about these aspects, because if you're filming a wedding the next weekend, things obviously can get very overwhelming. So it's a matter of staying organized, being like, this moment really stuck out today. We want to make sure that makes it in the film. Or so on and so forth. So that's kind of like how we try to manage everything and not get overwhelmed. It has to be a collaborative effort.
Okay, so even between you and your wife, that it was like that before we started working together. That was like the first point of like team collaboration.
I still to this day am never more like nervous. And it was all because of me. But when I show her a film that like a solid first rough cut, what will happen is I'll bring Heather in. She'll sit down, and I'll like have to like go in the corner and like turn around and be like, I can't watch her watching it because I just get like nervous, and when anyone watches it. Yeah. But she watches it and she has just this fresh eye of kind of like looking at things and making sure like things make sense. And there'll be times where she'll just be blunt and be like, I'll be honest, I don't quite understand how we got there. And naturally you want to get like defensive. And be like, you just don't get it, you know what I mean? That kind of thing. And I walk away and I'm like, damn, she's right. Like, she's 100% right. And then we make the change, and I'm like, it's a much better film. It's like so much better now than before. But she just kind of brings this fresh perspective. She films probably about 75% of the weddings with me, so she's there, she knows. But she's not as knee deep in the editing. So she'll remember the day, and then when she looks at it, without spending these hours of going through the footage, the fresh eyes are so helpful. So she's by far the most integral part of our editing process.
Okay, cool. So she's like the Virgil through your like Dante's options of how to edit this thing. She kind of guides the voice of like the brand.
100%. She's the voice of reason, a voice of brand and voice of reason, because it's impossible. Naturally, you just get too close to it.
Mm.
You're watching it. You can't you can't see the trees among the forest or whatever. It's like it becomes something like that. I don't know exactly the saying, but it can get overwhelming. So the fact that it's just all part of our process. We work with you guys, we get some solid edits done. Then I'll have her watch it, and she'll, if she gets emotional or goosebump moments, then I know like we hit it. And then sometimes we don't get there on the first try, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. It's all part of that process of working through. So,
does she ever identify or like remember a completely different linear thread to like tie the film together, and you chose maybe to focus on, like the family's history at that venue, and she's like, no, like the grandparents' story was like so much more, or like anything like that?
We kind of talk about it beforehand.
Okay.
And one thing with our films too, and we kind of work with you guys for, is we don't have like a set, like the film they got a 10-minute edit. It has to be 10 minutes, and at 9:59, if we get there, it's either going to have to be like an upgrade or something like that. We want to tell the best story that's possible. So let's say our wedding day packages, it's typically like a 5 to 7 minute film, is what we say in our packages. But typically those end up being closer to 8 to 10, because we don't want the story quality to sacrifice then just because we're trying to reach a time deadline. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. You're not cutting it off at the knees before, like, the landing moment.
Like, if we have to choose between choosing the grandparents' great story of them celebrating their 60th anniversary or whatever, that's part of the day, versus why they picked the venue, we have to put both. If it fits, we'll want to put both in there. That's what we try to do.
Yeah, so that's actually a great segue into one of my other questions I had for you. So with your style, you try to include parts of every speech in your edit. So what are some creative ways that you've utilized, maybe before we started collaborating together, that you would ways that you would get weaker speeches in to work in conjunction with a film?
There's always a way. The biggest thing with us that we just keep telling ourselves is, this is not our film. This is not us. This is not for like us here. Like, we're not the ones that are doing it. We're not. We're doing it for them. They picked their best man and maid of honor for a reason. Their families, their parents decided to speak for a reason. So we want to make sure that even if it is a shorter speech or a weaker speech or something like that, we have to find a way to get it in there. That's so important to us. So like, our rule is, we've done like rehearsal dinners where there's been 15 speeches, and realistically, obviously, we're not getting everyone in there, but family kind of takes priority. And again, through those conversations with couples beforehand, we're able to like know who the important players are. So it's like, that person's gonna make it in, and that kind of stuff. But if you're family, or if you're making a speech on the wedding day, we're finding you a way to get in the film, guaranteed.
Okay, great. So that was kind of addressing one other question I had, which is like, what's the criteria that you use to rank narrative content priority wise? So you look at, obviously, like they're ranking like VIP.
VIPs will definitely make it, and it kind of, again, I keep going back to it, but it kind of goes back to that pre-production. If they picked a certain venue because of a very specific reason, well, that story is probably going to make it into the film. Or the proposal story is just so out of this world and so awesome, that's going to make it into the film. So we have to kind of chat with them, and they tell us kind of what is important, and then we just try to find a way to get it in there. So, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Okay, so we're coming up. I wanted to keep these episodes to about a half an hour, but because we got into some tech issues, we'll go a little bit longer if that's cool with you. So I've got a few questions left, but if you're watching this right now, feel free to chat and submit any questions that you would want to ask Matt about some of the ways that he finds his story amidst all the possible options that you could have, or any techniques for working in those. If you want specific examples of how to work in some of those weaker speeches, I know, like for us, for instance, even if you kind of have a more montage-y moment of various speakers like in the reception saying just like the toast portion, like hopefully at least they have like the well wish that's
exactly
enough, right?
Yeah, because sometimes, typically, hopefully, or what a maid of honor or best man will do is hopefully talk about, if it's the maid of honor, you're pretty much hopefully going to be talking about the bride, and the best man is hopefully going to talk about the groom. So earlier in our films, we do have these sections of like the bride and her friends and family getting ready. But we know when the maid of honor is going to be talking about the bride, that's a perfect part for them. And same thing with the groomsmen and the best man, kind of, and the groom getting ready and that kind of stuff. So as long as they say something, we know we're going to be able to find it. And then if they give a cheers, we know that's at least going to lead into a party.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I can't think. I'm sure there's examples out there, but I can't think of something that we filmed where like, nope, there's no way they can get it. There's always a way, I feel.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, yeah, just utilizing different segments. So one surprising element to your films, I would say, or like something that kind of catches me off guard when I watch them, are like the recap moments that you do. So like, what inspired you to integrate that into your films?
It's so funny. It's actually kind of a funny story. So a few years ago, I was watching this movie, Big Fish, Tim Burton's film. I absolutely love that movie. And at the end of that film, the dad's in the hospital and he's about to pass. And the son ends up telling the dad a story, which is something that the dad did his whole life. And he told basically the story of his life, which was like almost like a recap of everything that we saw into the movie, leading into this big moment at the end. Mm-hmm. And I was watching it and I was like, wait, that recap, that's an awesome, I like love that idea. And then with the next film, we kind of found a way to incorporate the recap kind of leading into the dancing. So with our films, if you kind of go out and watch them, towards the end of it, we do like a recap of the weekend or of the day, mm-hmm. kind of this high energy piece with these moments that didn't make it earlier, that all leads into the, let's face it, the best moments of the wedding are the dancing. It's the best moments, it's the most fun moments. So we want to kind of build something that leads up to that. And the recap is just such a unique way to do that. So it's kind of how we came up with that idea.
Yeah, that's cool. I have never met at least a wedding filmmaker that references Tim Burton as an inspiration for their work.
That is the only thing that we have in common with Tim Burton and his style as far as that goes. But yes, that was kind of what triggered the idea in my head when I was watching that film, and that was a couple of years ago. And we kind of just try to find a way to incorporate that in all of our films since.
That's cool. So can you think off the top of your head, and maybe I'm throwing too big of a curveball at you, so if not, that's cool. But off the top of your head, can you think of any like surprising narrative like structure that you've built in any of your pieces just to kind of keep the viewer guessing? Like maybe it is bride prep and they're expecting the maid of honor to be speaking about how they met as kids and stuff like that. Like, do you ever throw the viewer a curveball and build it out?
Yeah, one that comes to mind, it was Jessica and Jameson. We did it in Shelburne, Vermont. So we started with the story of them and like the location and that kind of stuff. And that was like the first section, and then it led into the proposal. So you'd think like almost narratively the proposal would lead first and kind of kick things off, because that's kind of how linear how it would work. But we thought it'd be better to save the proposal for the second section, because a big part of their proposal too was where they each had a dog. They brought to the dog park, and that's where he proposed to her. And their dogs were such a huge part of their lives and of their wedding day. They actually were both the ring bearers that walked down the aisle. So by using that proposal story and getting the connection of their love for animals and for their dogs, it was a natural segue then to lead that to the ceremony with the dogs like walking down the aisle, and then that story kind of going. So we can get in this like headset of, all right, well, we're going to start with how they first met or the proposal, because that's just like how it happened in real life. Mm-hmm. But there might be other ways to kind of get that point across. So that's just one example that kind of comes to mind where we might do something a little bit differently.
Yeah. I've always heard that it's like it's pretty powerful to keep the viewer guessing, right? Keep them engaged. And I know that from filmmakers that are kind of like repeatedly producing content, it's important not to get too formulaic, because then
I think that's a very good point. But I do think your viewer is really two people and their family every single time. So where things may seem like repetitive to us, that do it like all the time.
Yeah.
The couple does normally like I sometimes think they hire us for a specific reason, that if we like had to like change it up or did something different, then they'd be like, well, that's not why we hired you. So it's like, I totally get that. And we just want to make sure that they're our audience, not like other videographers or other people in the industry, which I remember being caught up a lot in. They're our audience, and telling their story is the most important thing.
Yeah, you can't blindside them with a completely different style after
that's what the Tim Burton style.
Yeah.
The next couple that we do. Wait for that edit. We'll see how that looks.
That's great. Okay, so I want to ask you some questions from the viewers. So Trevor is wondering, what's your method for crafting the narrative if you aren't feeling too confident about your A-roll? Or if it seems like you don't have enough when you start the edit?
That's a good question. And that happens. So we have, like I said, we kind of do these casual conversations and stuff, but we never do them. Like, we never guarantee them, because you know how wedding days can be and stuff. So if things are falling behind and makeup's taking a little bit longer than usual and she has to rush and get in her dress, we might not be able to get an interview with the bride, and the groom might say last minute, you know what, I don't want to do that. And then what happens, we don't have that aspect of the story anymore, and then the speeches happen, and each speech is like 2 or 3 minutes, so we don't have a lot of that audio content to work with. We've been in that situation all the time. All of our music selections are mostly instrumental, because we are so audio driven, with lyrics kind of coming in with the last song. If we had to get creative, I would say we might go a little bit more lyrical early on to kind of fill that dead space and use natural audio of people getting ready. But there has been times where we've done a ceremony and I'm like, I don't know what we're gonna pull from that. Like, they didn't do their vows. It was an 8-minute ceremony. I'm like, wow, that's gonna be a tough one. But lyrics are a good way to kind of fill that dead space if need be.
Yeah, it's still a voice that is, telling a story, through the song. So especially if it's on point with the vibe of the day and everything, like the sentiment can be there and everything.
Exactly. So that's kind of a way that we try to work creatively if we're not getting that content that we need.
Yeah, and weaving lyrics in and out. I mean, most of our editors actually are musicians too, and it's just like that.
You can tell.
Yeah, the ability to cut music and take control over the song, as opposed to kind of feeling locked in with the track that you're given and be like, all right, well, I have a 2-minute song, so I got to make a 2-minute video.
Exactly. And nowadays with great sites like the Music Bed, I know we use Song Freedom too, the instrumental and lyrical selections it's so huge, because you're able to weave in and out, and you guys do that way better than I ever did. But yeah, so good question.
Well, yeah, well, cool, thanks for the kind words. Okay, and then our own Brianna Smith says, hey Matt.
She is a rock star. So she is like, I email her so much, and she always responds with happy emojis and pleasant, and even though we're sometimes asking the most ridiculous requests, so she's the best.
Yeah, she kills it with the emojis. If they had a sloth smiley face emoji, I think it would be like in every email I get.
That would be it. All right, so we're gonna keep our eye out for that next Apple update.
Yeah. So there's actually a question built into this one too.
Oh, okay. I thought she was just saying hi.
How do you balance capturing the safe shots with the creative shots?
Good question. So, and something else that we've kind of learned over the years is, let's say we're contracted for like 8 hours of the wedding day. I remember before, like, showing up right at like hour 1, like going in and leaving at the 10. What we try to do now is, either if it's close by, go to the venue maybe before the wedding day, or go really early in the morning, and we get all of our establishing shots done beforehand. And that way, come the wedding day, we're not worrying about that at all. We know we're going to have B-roll of the venue, of the area, of all that sort of stuff. And people, I remember being like, well, they're not paying you to do that, but the quality of your film really suffers if you don't kind of do that. So I kind of say our coverage like starts specifically with them at a certain time. But one way that's made things a lot more stress-free for us is getting as many establishing shots either before the day of the wedding or like early the morning of the wedding, so I'm not worrying about that stuff at all come the day of.
That's great. Yeah, that's excellent planning, is to build yourself extra opportunities to get things that free your mind up to focus on stuff that you can't get at any other point.
Yeah, exactly. You can get these establishing stuff at any time. You can't get the bride getting in her dress. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like you really have to focus on, well, what can I get before or after even, and then just focus on them come the day of.
Yeah, I mean, we've even seen filmmakers that will capture like audio at separate times too, like either like, and usually it's kind of like a last resort sort of damage control situation, right? Where the mic went out on the letter reading or something, so you ask them to do like an iPhone thing at the end or whatever. But using that time for like establishing shots and like the more safety type fallback is really important too.
Absolutely. It's better for you in the long run for the day of, that you're not stressing to run outside to get a shot of the venue or something like that beforehand. During cocktail hour when you could be doing something else.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, let's see. I have one final question. I think we're pretty good on time. What would be? Of
course, my doorbell's ringing now. Now the dog's going nuts, but that's all right.
Okay, last question would be for filmmakers that are just starting out, maybe just shot their first wedding or two. They sit down, they see all the doors open, they see all the paths they could go down. What would be like your parting piece of advice to help them not to be overwhelmed? Or do you want to answer your doorbell?
What's that?
Or do you want to answer your doorbell?
No, I'm not going to answer the doorbell. They'll wait for 1 second, so I can hear you. But I kind of got the question. With beforehand, I'm going to keep walking over here and just shut this door. With me. So beforehand, do as much as you can before and control what you can control. You know what I mean? There's so many things on the day of the wedding that you can't control, and you just have to kind of like roll with the punches. If you don't get a shot or don't expect something that's going to happen like that day, it's okay. It's totally fine. Just roll with the punches and try to think about what you can get before. So anyway, that's kind of like the number one thing that's been a huge thing for us. And don't think you can do it all. I can set around and see if I can get that audio, but I thought I could edit, I could shoot and manage and talk to the couples. It's impossible. There are so many other people like you guys out there that just can take something off your back and just really bring things to the next level. So that's something that I would definitely recommend.
That's awesome, man. Well, so I think we're good for today. Thank you for being my first guest, and sorry for the tech issues.
Oh my God, the tech issues, the dog's going nuts in the background. Someone's probably breaking in my house right now.
Yeah, right.
Hey,
at least I rang the doorbell first, right?
Yeah, well, that's very, very polite of them. So, seriously, man, it was an honor to be here and stuff, and it was great to kick this off with you guys. So
yeah, absolutely. And if you're watching and have any more questions for Matt, feel free to either throw them in the chat, throw them in the comments on this video, because this will live forever on after our live session ends.
Be out there forever.
Yeah,
it's gonna be exciting for people to study. Study later on.
And we hope to be doing more. So if there's a filmmaker whose brain you would be interested in picking about their editing styles, you can email us at ask@archaeuscreative.com. And then I'm supposed to say all that like and subscribe type stuff. So
yes.
Hit the bell or whatever. I don't know. I don't YouTube very much. But cool, man. Well, thank you everybody for joining in, and we will see you next time on Ask the Editor Live.
Yeah, man, Dave. Thanks so much. Thank everyone over there.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt. It was good to chat with you.
All right. See you, buddy.
All right. Bye.
Bye.